right, guys, welcome back to the Voice of the Broken. This is episode 4. I just recorded episode 3 yesterday. I'm trying to get a little bit ahead, so I can't really speak on how well episode 3 is doing. However, it seems to be doing very well. I am very proud of the community that we're building right now, and that there are men who are reaching out, offering their services, saying that if they can help somebody, they will. We've had people join in our private Discord. We have created a public Voice of the Broken chat room on Discord. Excuse me, that is available via email. We also have our Patreon group that is part of the $15 tier that will get you access to a public Discord that is public in terms of for our Patreon. All the men in our Patreon are there. Excuse me. And we also have a private Discord that is part of our Patreon that has at no more than 30 people at any given time. We do roundtable discussions. We do voice calls. We do book breakdowns. We have workout challenges. We have date challenges. It is a group of successful entrepreneurs, fathers, and husbands who are using that opportunity to help each other grow. This is just a quick shameless plug. I'm not going to sell this or push this any further than that. Just know that you have community and you have options that are available beyond your normal scope of things. With that being said, today's email is going to touch a little bit on child abuse, child SA. So you have your warning in that aspect. Normally I have a piece of paper in front of me and like I'm reading. I've moved my monitor closer to the camera so that I can just look over. I don't think that there's much of a difference from this to this. So with that being said, I'm going to save some paper and some time. Jumping into this. Dear Chris, and of course, hello, wonderful peaches. I saw your Instagram post asking for success stories after wanting to remove yourself. Get ready. This is a long one, brother. It's not. Nice try. It's not a long one. It's actually like 8 pages, but it's big font because I'm fucking blind. So I'm the ripe old age of 28. I'm married to my amazing wife, also 28, going on 6 years come the end of September. Together, we have 2 amazing daughters, 5 and 1.5 years old. I'd like to add that I am the oldest of 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls. Now, I do recognize that I have not needed an excuse to reach out to y'all and say hello. How much I appreciate the To Be Better podcast and how much it has helped my relationship with my wife, my extended family, friends, hell, even coworkers, but this post really hit me somewhere and I couldn't deny it. So without further dragging this on, let's get into it, shall we? Yes, shall we? Sadly, this is an all too common story nowadays. I came from a broken home, starting with a nasty divorce between my mother and father, shortly followed by physical abuse and just short of waterboarding, psychological abuse from a dude who was in a relationship with my mom for a number of years. I'm gonna pause. There are studies done that say when it comes to child abuse, children who have their father in the home are less likely to be abused, period, across the board. Children who live in single mother households have the highest statistics of abuse from their mother. Then it goes mother with other person, family member, boyfriend, whatever. Then mother, father. Then it goes down. Father by themselves is the lowest in terms of abuse towards children. This situation right off rip, men, if you have children, you need to be fucking present in their lives. This is something that I really want to do a standalone episode on that does not involve an email, but talks about the statistics of abuse that stems from a single parent household. I truly believe that we are where we are in this country right now because divorce is so high, single parent households is so high, the destruction of the nuclear family, and we are just not where we should be. Now that I've ranted about that, moving on. I also had to witness abuse of all varieties towards my mother. I would also find out about my SA to my younger 8 to 9-year-old sister, severe enough for said individual, instead of receiving a life sentence where he would be eligible for parole, instead received 70 years without parole, all while having to navigate being homeless and on the run from our abuser, with my 2 youngest siblings, twins, being less than a year old. They were products of the relationship between him and my mother. We did have to go to court twice. The first time a hung jury had occurred due to one jury member being disturbed from the testimonies and was unable to perform her civil duties. Fortunately, the second went much faster and smoother, and he received his penalty. During all of this, everything wasn't so terrible. We did get in contact with some amazing individuals who at the time were affiliated with BACA, Bikers Against Child Abuse, who really set the tone of what real badass dudes full of love were really like. Pause right fucking there. This is community. This is why in every single one of these episodes, I have stated that we need community. Whether that looks like a church group or the Discord or Bikers Against Child Abuse, there are a lot of men out there who have experienced a whole lot of hell that do not want to see others walk through it any more than they have to. Those are the men who are quick to reach down and pull somebody up instead of going, come on, pussy, you got this. This is the you are not alone, we fucking got you communities. And I think that because of the single parent homes and the lack of men in the home, even in the event that there is an additional male figure, a lot of times there is not a man in the house. And make no mistake, there is a fucking difference between a male and a man. And I've had this discussion a lot on the To Be Better podcast. I'm not going to get too far into that right now. But I believe to call yourself a man, to actually be a fucking man, is a badge of honor. And that's something that has to be earned. Just because you have a dick and balls does not fucking make you a man. It makes you a male. And there's a fucking difference in that. And if you want to be what I believe a man is, it takes constant work and effort and growth. It's not easy. You're going to have downfalls, and it's going to be a whole lot of trial by fire. If you have a man in the house, you are going to have a whole lot more direction on how to conduct yourself as a man or a gentleman moving through life than if you have a male who is there but not present, kind of a bitch, like doesn't do anything, doesn't provide anything, no knowledge, just is there. Whole different discussion. Also want to do an episode on that. Some of this is not punctuated properly, so I just had to cut a section out. I'm going to read this again and try to make it coherent. Now, that in itself, I feel like that is enough to drive enough people over the edge. And at the time of a 7th grade boy made for a very angsty young man who very much so hated the world. And it's not just a phase mom kind of kid, but our actual house was physically broken as well. Holes in the floors, many summers prior to this with no electricity and limited food. I think I got the gist of it. It is not a very solid upbringing. We could get into the statistics of where I should be versus where I am, but let's continue. This is all pre-high school after all, okay? Fortunately, high school was easier. I got involved with church and became a student worshiping the Bible. I became a student, and it says worship/Bible study leader. Got that. Fortunately, high school was easier. Got involved with church and became a student worship/Bible study leader. My mom remarried an awesome dude, met through BACA and the church, who has now been married 12 years. I graduated high school with hopes and dreams of becoming a pastor. When I graduated high school and took an internship in Alaska for a church, and to say it didn't go as I had hoped would be an understatement. You got a life lesson out of that, though. This is growth, right? And you're not really getting into a whole lot in that, just into terms of what happened. Maybe you will later, but that trial by fire is your life lessons. You have to go through things to really understand how to navigate adversity. It was my very first time to actually be alone. I mean, log cabin, no running water with an actual hole in the ground, outhouse, alone. And that was hard. To finally be with just you, your own thoughts, all of them, every day for several hours a day for 3 months. Pause. I just paused like I'm talking to my wife. And that's the second time I've done it in this email. This is, if you guys have ever watched Alone on the History Channel, this is why those people tap out. People do not fucking do well in isolation. It's also why some states have laws against being put in a hole. Your segregation, your time alone, like you can only do so long in there because it's considered cruel and unusual punishment. We are social creatures. We're not meant to be alone. and you spend a long time alone in your head, it changes who you are. It was the first time I realized how fucked up and how abnormal I was. There are very few people I could actually relate to and how lonely I could be for the rest of my life. That's when I was really introduced to my own darkness. After everything with my abuser, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and received a lot of state-provided counseling. But now I really had my first time to reflect and try to move on from it. So I thought. I later realized I didn't move on and buried it. I ran. My trip was also a bust in the sense that I was going to be mentored by this badass pastor with a master's and doctorate in theology, and I may have sat with him once a month. Again, everything was negative. The Kenai Peninsula is gorgeous and strongly recommend visiting, maybe not living, but visiting for sure. After my stint in Alaska, I came back home and no longer saw my ministry being involved with the church due to peeking behind the curtain, so to speak. I began to take general classes at my local community college and after a semester realized that it was not for me, and signed up for classes to become an EMT basic and worked to become a paramedic firefighter. During those 2 years, I met my wife at a college Bible study. EMT school seriously was the hardest thing I've done up to this point in my life, and it is not for the faint of heart. And was very quickly reacquainted with how hard this world is and ran very difficult calls to stomach and fathom. However, I saw it through and earned my paramedic patch. So that is that like an internship? Leave that in the comments. If you guys work in the EMT field, I would like you to you don't have to email me, just leave it in the comments on the YouTube channel of what that looks like. While you're going to EMT school, it's not just classroom work, I take it. So you actually have to go on calls and you have somebody there kind of mentoring you while you're doing calls. Am I right in that? And if so, I guess that's just really all I need to know. Now, in the midst of going to school, my now wife has been diagnosed with a pituitary tumor that caused a bit of stress with possibilities of her not being able to have children and going blind, where she even gave me the option of leaving with no hard feelings. But hey, what can I say? This chick is something special and people like her don't come around, and to top it off, she's pretty hot. Good for you, bro. So I stuck around and will continue as long as she'll let me. Fortunately, it worked out, and a successful removal of the tumor with no damage to her pituitary gland or vision and baby-making hormones. Love that. Prior to surgery, we were advised that if we ever did want to have any biological children to begin attempting, just in case, per a neurosurgeon, if we wanted... Okay, I have to read that again. Prior to the surgery, we were advised that if we did want to have any biological children to begin attempting, just in case, came from a neurosurgeon. So at 23 years old, completely unprepared to have children, we said, we'll figure it out. And well, with enough practice, she got pregnant. Hey, the practice is the best part. It's not so much the end goal there. That is absolutely about the journey over and over and over again. My wife and I got married September 30th, 2018, and on our wedding day, she was 6 months pregnant with our first daughter. The reason I add this is because my daughter, during the genetic testing, our daughter was pre-diagnosed with Turner syndrome, which is not like super rad. Turner syndrome can cause a lot of serious medical issues to not being born at all in a lot of cases. Fortunately, my daughter made it to term January 6, 2019, and appeared to have little to no birth defects. However, she did have this one quirk to her. She has serious reflux, like spending 2 weeks in the hospital, sent home with a nasogastric tube for a year so that she could eat. Being a first-time parent is hard enough when you add all of that. When you add on all of that, geez. But nowadays, you would never know other than her being shorter, also part of Turner's. She's a sweet, smart princess of a girl. Fuck yeah, dude. Love this. Fortunately, in May of 2018, I landed a pretty sweet gig as a paramedic firefighter, and May, I'll be at my department for 6 years. But remember, those unresolved issues I was talking about, they made a huge comeback during the pandemic. This is the second email in a row that we've gotten from an EMT from the pandemic time. I think that there's going to be a lot of things in this generation that's going to look like the 60s and 70s when we have conversations about them in the future. When you talk about the 60s and 70s right now, you talk about hippies, peace movement. You talk about civil rights movements. You talk about Vietnam and you talk about the riots and maybe Woodstock and drug use, but it really depends on who you're talking to. But that is the most prevalent conversations of those time frames. There's a lot that happened in that 20 years, but that seems to be what history focused on in American history. I truly believe in the next 10 or 15 years, the pandemic time frame and the way that this is panning out is going to have a very different look for those who were being told about it versus those who lived it. And this is the prime example of that. Due to job-related incidents, having close calls and tough calls that nobody should have to witness, I was finally pushed over the edge. I reached out to my primary care physician, strike one, to prescribe medication to help with all of my anxiety, depression, manic episodes, and lack of wanting to live. I'm pause because he's going to go on and talk about it, and I don't want to forget what I'm going to say. And I just paused again like I'm talking to my wife, who's not even here. I'm fucking at the studio by myself recording this shit. I understand that people need medication. I'm not discounting that. I'm not taking it away from people. I fucking get it. I understand, however, that there are people who rely on that like a crutch for the rest of their lives because they were prescribed medication, and that's where their treatment stopped. I firmly believe with every part of my being that medication should be used as a tool to get you through therapy to process the things that you could not process on your own. If you get triggered or you have a panic attack or you're having some sort of anxious response to having a conversation about what's going on in your brain, and therefore you shut down and can't have that conversation, there could be a med that you can take short term that will help you have those conversations while remaining calm to work through the actual issues that you're dealing with. I don't believe that putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound is going to fucking stop it from bleeding. I truly believe it is just a temporary patch. And that Band-Aid is going to have to get bigger and bigger and bigger because that wound is not going to stop hemorrhaging. That is my view on medicine. I am not a fucking doctor. I am not even a high school graduate. I am a fucking dumbass who has a following. I have a whole lot of life experience and a whole lot of autodidact. I'm self-educated. Like I've done all of this on my own. Peaches has been a fucking godsend to me because I've been able to help process through some of my own things with her. And every therapist that I've talked to, they all agree that drugs are not supposed to be met as a long-term solution to what's going on. It is a simple thing to get you through what you need to get through to work through your problems. It is a tool. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. Where was I? Okay. And man, was that a shit show to say the least. He would put me on whey, take me off cold. I maybe there's a typo there, so I'm going to assume that you wrote, he'd put me on way too much, take me off cold turkey, start another, rinse and repeat for about a year. And to be honest, that year got really fuzzy and a lot of it's lost due to being on autopilot. So I'm pause again because a lot of these medicines will tell you not to come off of them cold turkey, that there's a taper effect that needs to happen. We also don't know how these meds are going to mesh in your system. If you're on one medicine and they say stop taking that and they prescribe you something else and you start taking it immediately, those two drugs are in your system together. Your response to that and my response to that may not be the same thing. They call this shit practicing medicine. It's practicing medicine. This is all theory. Not to mention that most doctors are being paid to prescribe you shit. They get bonuses and kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies to give you fucking drugs. So unless there is I would like to point out, this is why I'm actually an advocate for AI in the medical field. Because if there is a very comprehensive chart and all of the drugs being used is there, AI can fucking do a deep dive and be like, this shouldn't be given with this person because of this drug. They need 3 months before they can try this thing. There could be a whole lot of medical advances in that scenario. And I do know that AI is already in use in the medical field, way more than most people believe. But that's something that could be a true benefit. But practicing medicine and having a doctor just throw things until you feel better, what is going on with your brain? Like what is really going on inside of your body at that point? You have no fucking idea. And you're trusting somebody because they have letters behind their name to give you a whole bunch of shit that they may not have taken before and don't know how it's going to act because they haven't done studies This is just the new drug right now and you should take it. Is it obvious that I don't like all of that? Is that clear? Because I think it's pretty clear. Again, this is a me thing, and I'm not shitting on people who take medicine. I think that there are people out there who absolutely fucking need it. My issue is with the actual healthcare system and the way that it's prescribed and the lack of follow through from patients because of addiction and the ease of access, lack of medical. I also reached out to a local therapist who specialized in PTSD, strike 2, over a telehealth session where I was a crying mess, and so was she. She stopped me, said that she couldn't help me, and terminated our care plan. I don't know who you were doing your telehealth through. To Be Better is somewhat sponsored by BetterHelp.com. And we have a code that will save you 10%. We actually don't make anything off of it. It is literally just for those of you who need it, that need more than we are able to give you, so that you can go to betterhelp.com/tobebetter and save 10% with your thing. If you guys are trying to get therapy and you're trying to get help, and in this case, your therapist doesn't want to work with you and they end the session, you can find another therapist. However, ending a session where both people are fucking crying and just cutting that shit off is a fucking problem. How are you going to pull those demons out of somebody and then fucking walk away? Unreal. I also think this is why a lot of men don't want to open that box. I truly believe that we have so much fear. I'm going to make this personal. You guys will see me start to cry on the podcast quite a bit. I cut a lot of it, but I know that I have to stop talking and I have to really push that shit back down in order to continue to have the conversation, because I know that if that stopper comes off the bottle, the floodgates are going to open and I am not going to be able to calm back down. I know that I will probably end up a fucking nervous mess. There will be snot bubbles and ugly crying and I will fall the fuck apart. And I don't want anyone to ever see me like that. And I know that when my bottle is so full that I can barely get that top back on, I will find somewhere private and I will pull over and I will fucking let it out for 20 to 30 minutes and then pull myself together and go home and go back about my life, because that's not for everyone. And though I know full well that Peaches would support me in the event that she saw that, I think that it would concern her more than the comfort is worth, right? I don't want to put her through that. Most men don't want to be viewed as weak, but I think on a higher level, men who have women like I do don't want to put our person through that. It's not fair to them, especially because a lot of the shit that we are suppressing is fucking decades old and we just haven't processed through the shit yet. So when I said a minute ago about them opening the fucking bottle and walking away, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't let those demons out and expect us to just be able to push that shit back in there. Like, it's taken a lot for us to get to the point where we're semi-okay and functioning. The idea of letting all of that out is a very scary prospect for me. It's a lot. After that, things really spiraled. From what I can remember, I became a real ass, emotionally abusive to my wife. I would do the bare minimum to keep my daughter alive. While I was at home, my wife was working. While I was at home and my wife was working evenings, blaming everything on my wife, accusing her of outrageous things, just all in all being a shit husband and a shit father. Dude, that's a fucking hard thing to admit. It's a hard thing to admit. Both things that I couldn't live with, and now strike 3. Can we just touch on that for a minute, dude? Because blaming everything on my wife, accusing her of outrageous things. I'm gonna hang on. I just went and grabbed a book. This is 8 Dates. This is a Gottman Institute book. I am a fucking huge fan of their shit when it comes to dating and communication. We have it on a recommended reading list on tobebetter.co. You can click on downloads and download the book list if that's something that you're into. But I want to touch on something because I read this a week ago, and this triggered that thought. It says in here, when you're married or otherwise committed to a partner, ideally what you do is create a wall around the two of you with an open window between the both of you. This wall around the two of you separates you from others in terms of your deepest emotional and physical connections. And what Dr. Glass found in her research is that when people, especially people who are unhappy in their relationship, start confiding in other persons about the relationship, they are opening a window to this outside person. And when they keep this new platonic or emotional relationship secret from the partner, they start building a wall between themselves and their primary partner. There's a whole lot more to this, and it's something that I wanted to bring up on the To Be Better podcast, but I'm going to leave it at that. When you are going through something and you shut the window and cut off the access that your person has to you, things really start to deteriorate really fucking fast because there's no longer a breeze or air flowing between the two of you. You have basically isolated yourself from the fucking world at that point if you've properly built your walls. And you have to be aware of that. You saying that I became a shit husband and a shit father was you opening your window, and it's like the movie Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, where he opens the window. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what I envisioned in this. Like, that was the whole flash. So good for you. Good for you for admitting that, dude. It's so crazy the way that my brain works. Anyways, I was at work and ran a particularly tough call involving a child where I had abandoned all professionalism and was prepared to harm the patient's sperm donor, who was at the time high and drunk. If my lieutenant had not intervened, things very well could have gone bad. I finished my shift, but was strongly encouraged to take time off. During my time off, I had devised a plan to take my life without it looking like I did so that my family would receive benefits. You guys all know, if you have been in that position and you have life insurance, you know that conversation in your head. You know what that fucking feels like. You know that there is a checklist of things that you have to go through to make sure that your people are okay if you go. It's a lot. And he just said it so nonchalant. I was going to go to work on my motorcycle, lay it down on the freeway in front of an 18-wheeler and hope it be ruled an accident. I wasn't given the chance. My lieutenant, who was also the lead guy of our peer support team, put things together for me to go to the IAFF Center of Excellence, where I spent a total of 2.5 months. 2.5 weeks of that were spent on suicide watch. That means you were on a paper sheet, bro. I'm going to pause there too, because that's a scary prospect for a lot of people. I don't know what you guys have where you live, but in Florida, we have something called the BACA Act. And you can be put on a non-voluntary 72-hour hold if you are deemed a threat to yourself or the people around you for a psychiatric evaluation. Like they really, it's basically a 72-hour suicide watch in most cases. Those 72 hours can turn into months because you were there non-voluntarily. So for people who have been in a psych ward, you know that there's a very real fear of being held against your will in a situation like that because you're a threat to yourself and to other people. I think a lot of men think about things like that when they consider getting help, and that's also a very scary prospect. However, I can't imagine what would be worse. Let me rephrase that. I know what is worse because I've been in those positions, and the life that I have now is dope as a motherfucker. And if had not been forced to get that help, I would not be where I am. There's a lot to that. I really wish, or we need to, how about we need to get to a point where we have a lot more access to information and more community of men to talk to other men and like really brainstorm. Men. I have to preface that again. More men, not males, men. I would also like to point out that in the event that you find yourself in a community of men and you are acting like a male, you may not find the help that you're looking for because there's a level of accountability and a lot of groups where if you try to go get help, men being fixers are going to try to help fix your problem. And if you start making excuses and you're not willing to do the work and heed the advice that's given, you might be in the wrong community, and that's okay. And if that's the case, you need to find a different community, right? So like, let's keep that in mind that just because you find a community, it may not be the right one. Maybe you need a church group. Maybe you need to be admitted. I don't fucking know, but not every help is going to look like the right thing. Sometimes the group that you find may not be the group that you need. The COE is an inpatient facility in Upper Marlboro, Maryland that specializes in firefighters' mental health. You spend every day 8 to 5 performing some kind of therapy, very hard, intense therapy, everything from group therapy, EDMR, hypnosis, yoga, you name it, it was there. And crazy enough, if you believed in it and did the work, you'd get results. I believe that. I went there on August 28th, 2020 and came back on October 8th. I wish I could say when I got home everything was better and fixed and happy. But apparently I had heard a lot of people, especially my wife. To this day, I don't know why she stayed. Because she's your wife, bro. Because there was a commitment made. This is for better or worse. I understand that mental illness is a non-visual sickness. It is a sickness. It affects your body in all kinds of ways. It affects the way that you process things. It is a sickness, but it's something that most people can overcome. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. She stayed because for better or worse, you were her husband. I would also like to say that this is why I think women are meant to be nurturers, right? Because we put ourselves in these situations. We fucking do this shit to ourselves. And they have a compassion and an empathy that we fucking lack. And if it wasn't for their compassion and empathy, and if they were more masculine and like us, relationships wouldn't last. You would be butting heads too much. There would never be softness in the home. It would be too much. And that speaks to feminine energy. And you know, there's going to be people in the comments that I know that are going to get upset about that because I'm talking about a heterosexual relationship. But if you want to look at it between two men as well, there's always a softer man in that situation, right? There's still somebody that has to be more nurturing than the other to make that a thing. And the fact that I even have to bring that up is stupid, but I felt the need to do so. Moving on. But she did, and for that I'm grateful. Since then, I have worked to continue bettering myself and my family. Am I perfect? No, far from it. Do I have lots to learn? You betcha. But I do see my success. Good, bro. Because there is an acknowledgement and that comes in that. You were able to celebrate small victories. And without small victories, you'll never make it to your main goal. If you set 15 small victories and your 15th victory is going to be your big goal, and every one of those little tiny goals along the way is getting you one step closer and you learn to celebrate those things, those little victories are going to amp you and motivate you into that next thing. It's just a little bit more fuel to the fire, right? To continue to keep that shit going until you hit your big victory. If you don't set those small goals and you're looking at this big major thing and you don't feel like you're ever going anywhere, why would you continue to work for something if you don't feel like you're making progress on it? You'll get defeated. This is hard. Let's give up, right? Some of you will catch that movie reference, but it's a lot to think about. I'm glad so far that I haven't gotten emotional in this one. That's fucking dope. I have an amazing relationship with my wife and daughters. I like to believe we are all successful in our own right. I like to think I'm pretty well respected outside of my family as well. I have become part of my IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, peer support. I'm able to love a lot and receive love. I'm able to look at everyday life as an opportunity and a gift. Initially, my greatest catalyst for not going through with self-termination was somebody else cared enough to step in and help me. Later, I realized that I did not want to cancel my 365 24/7 subscription on Earth, but that I just wanted to stop feeling so miserable, lost, lonely, misunderstood, and unappreciated. Unappreciated and unloved. But I just wanted to stop feeling so miserable, lost, lonely, misunderstood, unappreciated, and loved. Well, there went the emotions. Can we let's really break that down, right? You can be in a room full of people, 100 people that you know personally, relatives, loved ones, and feel like you are on a fucking island in the middle of the ocean with no one around you. That loneliness, while being around people that are supposed to care about you, is one of the hardest things to process and understand why. As I've learned choice theory and understand Adlerian psychology to my fucking basic understanding of Adlerian psychology, I believe that that's a choice. There's a fear of rejection. There's a fear of people not understanding or getting you. There's a fear of opening up. That loneliness at some level comes down to the decisions that you're making in life. Being miserable, lost, and lonely, I really believe that comes down to not having a proper connection with the people that you love, right? So everything I just said, I believe that those are choices that we make. Whether we make them consciously or subconsciously is a very different discussion, but those are choices. Sometimes maybe it's just that we have a hard time connecting, right? Because there are times where you really want to talk to somebody and you just don't know how to find the words to fucking do it. So that connection falls off. Which would lead into being misunderstood, which will make you feel unappreciated and unloved because nobody fucking gets you. Like, that's what my depression looks like. At the time, I didn't see a way out of the valley. I was out of energy and just wanted to accept that I wasn't meant to live a good, happy life. If that was the case, then what's the point of continuing my own suffering and misery? Dude, I've been there. I've fucking been there. I had a conversation one night with a friend of mine in their kitchen, sitting on a countertop. And we were talking about our lowest of lows, and we were both suicidal at one point. And she asked me what made me not go through with it. And like, you're having a conversation with people and you really pick and choose when you're going to open up. And a lot of the times you just give surface level answers. And I remember sitting there and like, I started to talk and then I stopped, and it wasn't like I was about to cry. I did cry, but I didn't stop from that. Like, I got to the point where like, I had never really been asked an honest question about why I'm still here. Right. Because people don't care. They really don't. Like, people don't want you to feel bad around them because that makes them feel bad. I believed that because I didn't believe that anyone else really fucking understood or cared about me. This falls back into the previous statement. So having that, I'm on an island all by my fucking self and no one gets it. Why the fuck should I open up? Because people don't want my bullshit. They don't want to feel bad. They don't give a fuck that I'm going through it. So why the fuck would I talk to anyone? But I realized in that moment that the person asking was not only asking because they actually cared, but because they were going through something similar and they were looking for a reason to fucking live. Which made me cry even fucking harder when I started crying because there's a whole lot to that. But like, I connected in that moment a whole lot of fucking points in my life, and I realized that I deserved to be fucking happy. Like, my entire life up to that point had been fucking garbage. Minus happy spurts here and there. And like at the time I didn't understand that there's a difference between happiness and joy. And that happiness is short term, it's fleeting, it's buying a new car or taking a motorcycle ride with a group of people or having, a dope photo shoot or a really good date. That's happiness. But having joy is waking up in the morning and going, God, thank you for letting me see the sunlight today. Up until that point in my life, I had never woke up and had that moment. Not once. Not one fucking time in my life did I ever wake up and be grateful that I got to see another day. And I believed because all of the people in my life got to experience that, I wanted to fucking experience that. And then when I was at my darkest of dark and I was in that place where like I was ready to check out, I remember feeling how fucking unfair everything felt because I never got to experience those things. And you can call it selfishness, dude, if you want to call it that. But like, I fucking persevered through those dark moments because I believe I deserved more than I've ever got to fucking experience. Why would I be put here to simply fucking suffer my entire existence? Like, that's not, with my faith. And at the time, my faith was not there. I had walked away from God. I was in a fucking really dark place. I believed that I fucking deserved more. Why would any creator, regardless of what you believe, put you here simply to walk through fire your entire fucking life and then die? I had this conversation with a buddy of mine named Nick, who is, he's a big nerd. We're both big Dungeons and Dragons guys, and we're both Christians, followers of Christ. And like, he's somebody that I actually admire, especially when it comes to our religious talks. And we had a discussion this morning because he watched episode 3 and he said that he doesn't believe that God puts people here to suffer, that he doesn't believe that his God is one who wants people to suffer, that we do that to ourselves through free will. And I had to remind him of the story of Job, where God gave Satan the ability to go and torment this fucking dude. And like, to remind him what Abraham had to walk through while walking up this mountain, knowing that he was about to put a knife in the stomach of his son. And like, there is a fucking torment there. How in those situations did God not know what was happening? If this is an all omnipresent, knowing, all fucking powerful being, you know what you're doing. You know what you're putting these people through. And your reasons for doing that may be your reasons, but it doesn't change the fact that we have to go through hardships and we have to suffer sometimes to have a better understanding of things. The previous email, episode 3, that firefighter EMT guy is now heading a department where they're helping young men who are firefighters and paramedics get help that they need because of their darkness. You're fucking doing the same shit from what it sounds like. You've become a part of IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, for peer support. You're doing the things that are going to help people who did not have the mental fortitude or the resources that you had. There's a greatness in that, right? There's a love in that. There's a true understanding, because when somebody comes to you and they're going through what they're going through, you can't relate to them. You can never see somebody's suffrage through their own eyes. And what you went through was your hell, and what somebody else is going through is their hell. I can't understand your feelings. I can relate to them through my experience and how it made me feel, but how I felt and how you felt will never be the same thing. And I can tell you, I get it, man. I've been there. I don't get it. I know what I fucking went through. I have no idea what you're going through right now, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to let you fucking let it out, dude. And if I can give you some advice, dope. If I can give you a hug, I'll fucking do that too. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can say or what type of advice that I can provide, but I'll be there. You're there. You've gone through that shit. And because you've gone through that, you have a level of empathy for these men and women that others in that position may not fucking have, because they haven't been in that darkness. You are a pin light while somebody's walking through, stumbling, fumbling over things that they're walking to right now, because that little beam of light, that little pinprick of light is the only thing they can see. I'm able to love a lot and receive love. I'm able to look at everyday life as an opportunity and a gift. Initially, my greatest catalyst for not going through with it, I'm sorry, I read all of that. I'm going to continue reading it, though, because I feel like it was relevant to what I was just talking about. My greatest catalyst for not going through with the self-termination was somebody else cared enough to step in and help. They were your fucking light in the darkness. I was out of energy and just wanted to accept that I wasn't meant to live a good, happy life. If that was the case, then what's the point of continuing my own suffering and misery? But I believe that God, or whatever anybody else wants to call it, had something different in mind for my life. While I was at a said firefighter camp, my catalyst soon became a man and keep going and try to learn to be happy. That the rest of my life doesn't have to be so miserable. Understand the difference between happiness and joy. Learn gratitude. It's real fucking easy when I'm having a bad day to throw shade on everyone around me, right? I can become a fucking black hole in my house. Excuse me. I can choose to do that. And it is a choice. Because I feel like fuck you to everyone. And I want everyone else to understand that I feel like fuck you to them. That's my tool to get you all to stay the fuck away from me, because I'm going through it, right? Regardless of the emotion, you can add all of that however you want to add that up. But that is a tool that I'm using to let people know that I'm not okay on a level. I can instead choose gratitude. I have an amazing wife. I have 2 kids that I get to watch grow up. I have been invited into a family that is going to prosper because of my choices. I'm loved. We have an amazing life. I can show gratitude instead of angst or hurt. And that's a choice. You can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. You can't be stressed out and grateful at the same time. You can choose, however, which route you want to go down. When you start feeling that darkness, what's the fucking point? I don't want to be miserable anymore. You can look at your life and go, it's really not that bad. I have a roof over my head. My bills are paid. My kids wake up and hug me before they go to school and we can pray together. And like, I have a woman who truly appreciates all of my hard work that tells me, I know that you have to go to work anyways, but I appreciate the hard work that you put in to make sure that our family has what we have. I can choose gratitude. I can choose to see things differently than the way that I'm currently seeing them, because in the moment, I don't feel happy. It's okay to not feel happy. Sometimes you get bored. Sometimes life is just boring. I don't want to fucking sit around and watch House MD on TV all fucking night. I could be exploring the world in a van, or riding my motorcycle, or zip lining, or fucking going to a gun range, or playing paintball, or on a date shooting paper straws at my wife across the table because it'll make us laugh. Like, there's so many things that I could be doing, but right now I'm bored. That boredom can lead you to a very dark place if that's where your mind is. You can make a choice to be like, hey, I can't sit here anymore. Like, I've been in the house all day long. Let's go for a walk. You can choose to have a different outcome, but you have to make the choice. And you did. My catalyst soon became to be the man and keep going and try to learn to be happy, so that the rest of my life doesn't have to be so miserable. My greatest success is not stopping and staying in the valley. The valley is dark. You don't walk, let alone run out of it. You stumble, you fall, you crawl, but you do not stop. Some days the valley is darker, but eventually it gets lighter, and you find yourself out of the valley. My greatest successes are, number one, really loving myself, which is something I think everybody struggles with. Whether you want to admit it or not, a lot of us really do not have self-worth. Being able to take accountability for my actions, learning from them, living boldly enough to share my experiences. Number two, having a smoking hot wife who wholeheartedly supports and trusts me, and dare I say, slightly obsessed with me. Same. Three, having two brave, smart, confident daughters who think dad is Superman. Finally, being a man's man and being somebody people are comfortable coming to for anything at any time. Setting myself up to be that man, husband, father, friend that I so greatly yearned for growing up. Proving to myself and others that in this day and age, it is possible to be a masculine man and a rad dad. When you stop looking at your kids as dependents and stop looking at your kids as someone that you have to protect and as somebody that you simply have to provide for and you have to make good people, and realize that they are malleable minds that are going to follow in your footsteps to some degree, makes you change your fucking path, because you've already had it really fucking hard. Knowing that they're going to have little legs that are going to try to keep up with you, and walking that path, you're going to pick an easier path. I believe that at some level, the curiosity of life is going to make them venture off onto their own. And eventually that's exactly what they're going to do. But walking that easier path is going to build the leg strength and the navigational skills, terrain, assessment for them to actually do those things. And if they have to do it on their own before they have all of that, they're not going to thrive in life. They're going to be fumbling around in that dark valley forever. I have forgiven my abuser, my mother and father. My mother and I's relationship is great, as well as my father and I's relationship. Shortly after I started listening to y'all, I recommended my mom listen to y'all, and she has for the past 7 to 8 months. Most importantly, I've managed to forgive myself. The relationship between my siblings is pretty awesome as well. The older siblings, he referred to as the OG3. We are each other's best friends. My brother is a unionized pipe fitter and is doing pretty well for himself. My sister is in the Army working in intelligence, so again, I'd say doing pretty well for herself. And the twins are currently in high school doing goofy small town high school shenanigans. So all in all, everything that my family and I have gone through, I think we are doing pretty well. And for me, that's pretty successful. This was a lot. And even if it doesn't make it anywhere other than my iPhone and an email in my sent folder, it was nice to see how much I have done and overcome. And I appreciate the moment and your call to see that I'm successful. I would love to hear back from y'all and open to any and all communication. A long-term listener, LOL. Get it from everyone else who says, LOL, get it from everyone else who says it. Because we get people who say long-time listener, first-time emailer. Love what y'all are doing. Please don't stop. And then he says his name. And then he says, P.S. I know the timeline is wonky and I would love to answer any questions. And I know y'all don't like hearing the details of certain things, but if needed, I'm able to give more details. And then he sent a picture of him and his wife and his kids. You guys ever watch Back to the Future? And there's the picture of the brother and the sister with Marty McFly, and like they're standing there all awkward in their 80s clothes. And as he's playing the guitar, his brother's fading away and his sister's already gone. And then he starts to fade away. And right now, while looking at this picture, I see a man holding his daughter's hand with his wife and his other daughter. And all I can think of is what this picture would look like if you weren't in it. Yep. And all I can think of is what this picture would look like if you weren't in it. It's a lot. It's a lot to process. And they say that movies don't affect our way of thinking, right? Absolutely do. I have your name, bro, and I have your email here. And in the event that somebody writes in that has something similar, I may try to put you in contact with them if you're okay with that. I don't know how that's going to look, but you are obviously somebody who has gone through some shit and you might have advice for somebody. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode of The Voice of the Broken. I really would like to continue doing these things. I really would like to see how it's going. If you feel like this podcast has given you anything or has provided you some sort of solace or even a new perspective, please share the content. I have committed to 10 episodes of this. After 10 episodes, I'm going to reevaluate where I want to take this and how I want it to progress. And if it's going to end, it's going to end. If it's going to keep going, it's going to keep going. But ultimately, I felt called to do this, and so far it's been getting overwhelming support, and I would like to continue doing these things. So please share the content. Check out The Voice of the Broken on TikTok. I am posting clips there. It's really, if you're watching the long-term format, just go and fucking subscribe. It'll help me out. Also, if you guys are watching this on YouTube and you would like to listen to these episodes, it is on Spotify and Apple and everywhere that you can get podcasts. The Voice of the Broken. Search it, share it. We'll see you guys on the next one.